It was a cool autumn night when Professor Kim noticed something strange on his monitor. He had been studying the stars for 20 years, but he'd never seen anything like this. The signals were subtle at first, just tiny blips on his advanced telescope array that most people would ignore. But Professor Kim wasn't most people. "Lee, come look at this," he called to his research assistant, who was organizing data files nearby. Lee hurried over, coffee in hand, and leaned down to examine the screen. "What am I looking at, Professor?" Lee asked, squinting at the unusual patterns. "I'm not entirely sure," Professor Kim replied, his voice quiet with concern. "But these energy signatures, they're moving against stellar currents. Natural objects don't do that." For 3 nights straight, they tracked the anomalies, sleeping in shifts on the old couch in the observatory. On the 4th night, the pattern became unmistakable. Something was heading toward Earth, and it was moving with purpose. Across the vast emptiness of space, the massive Narul harvester ships glided silently toward their next target. Inside the command vessel, Commander Gorn studied holographic projections of Earth with cold, calculating eyes. His leathery skin reflected the blue glow of the planet's image as he circled it, assessing its value. "Another water world," he noted, to his subordinates. "Rich with organic material and minerals, the dominant species appears primitive, pre-interstellar. Standard harvesting protocols will be sufficient." The lieutenant beside him clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Our scouts report minimal defense capabilities. They've barely reached their own moon." Commander Gorn had overseen the harvesting of 37 inhabited worlds during his lifetime. The routine was always the same: send in scouts, assess resistance, deploy harvesters, and strip the planet of all useful resources. The native species were typically captured for study, then processed for nutrition or discarded. Humans would be no different. "They use such primitive communication methods," Gorn remarked, watching satellite transmissions. "Simple radio waves and digital signals. They won't even detect us until we're in their atmosphere." Back on Earth, Professor Kim was frantically compiling his data. The observatory's small meeting room was cluttered with star charts and printouts as he prepared his presentation for the International Space Agency. "They won't believe us," Lee said, pacing nervously. "They'll say it's a malfunction or space debris." Professor Kim looked up from his laptop, dark circles under his eyes. "They have to believe us. I've triple-checked everything. These objects are changing course to avoid detection. Space debris doesn't do that." The meeting went exactly as Lee had predicted. The agency officials listened politely, then dismissed Professor Kim's findings as inconclusive and speculative. One even suggested he take some vacation time. "With all due respect, sir," Professor Kim said, struggling to keep his voice steady, "what we're observing isn't natural. These objects are slowing down as they approach our solar system. They're hiding in Jupiter's shadow to avoid detection by our main satellite array." The head of the agency smiled condescendingly. "Professor, do you realize how many alien invasion reports we get every year? Come back when you have concrete evidence." As Professor Kim and Lee left the building, a light rain began to fall. "What do we do now?" Lee asked, looking defeated. "We keep watching," Professor Kim replied firmly. "And we prepare." For the next 2 weeks they worked independently, using the university's resources to track the approaching objects. Professor Kim called in favors from colleagues at observatories around the world, creating an unofficial monitoring network. Then, on a clear night in April, they got their concrete evidence. "Professor," Lee burst into the lab, tablet in hand. "They've sent something smaller ahead. Look." The screen showed multiple small craft detaching from the larger objects, accelerating toward Earth. Their trajectory would bring them to the dark side of the moon, perfectly positioned to observe Earth undetected. Professor Kim immediately called his contact at the space agency, but before he could explain, breaking news alerts began flooding in. Amateur astronomers around the world were reporting unusual objects near the moon. Minutes later, military radar stations detected the scout ships entering Earth's atmosphere. The agency official who had dismissed Professor Kim now called him back, voice tense. "Kim, we owe you an apology. We're picking up multiple objects entering our atmosphere. What exactly are we dealing with?" "I don't know," Professor Kim admitted, But whatever they are, they've been harvesting their way across the galaxy. And now they're here. Commander Gorn watched with satisfaction as the scout ships deployed. The humans wouldn't know what hit them. This species was like all the others, soft, unprepared, and doomed. The Narul had consumed countless civilizations, more advanced than Earth's. Humans would be processed within weeks, their planet stripped bare within months. What Commander Gorn couldn't possibly understand was that humans were unlike any species the Narul had encountered before. They would soon learn that on Earth, the line between predator and prey could shift in unexpected ways. And when backed into a corner, humans didn't just fight. They changed the rules of the game entirely. As the first scout ships entered Earth's atmosphere, Professor Kim and Lee watched from their observatory rooftop. "I hope we're ready for this," Lee whispered. "We're not," Professor Kim replied honestly, "but we're more resourceful than they think." The morning fog hung heavy over Jeju Island as Fisherman Park and his crew prepared their boats. It was a routine they'd followed for decades, checking nets, loading supplies, watching the weather. But today felt different somehow. The sea was too quiet, the birds too scarce. "Something's not right," Park told his first mate. "Fish aren't jumping, and look at the sky, not a single gull." His crew of 6 nodded in agreement. They'd all grown up on these waters and knew when nature was sending warnings. Still, families needed feeding, and fishing was their livelihood. "We'll stay close to shore today," Park decided, eyeing the unusual mist that seemed to glow slightly around the edges. "And keep your radios on." 3 miles offshore, hidden in that strange fog, the first Narul scout ship hovered just above the water. Inside, Hunt Leader Vex prepared his elite team of 4 hunters for their first Earth collection mission. "Remember, this is merely assessment," Vex instructed. "Capture several specimens, evaluate resistance capabilities, then return. Their primitive boats and fishing tools pose no threat to your exoskeletons." The hunters checked their capture nets and paralysis rods. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall, with mottled gray-green skin that could change color like an octopus. They'd evolved on a predator-heavy world where being both hunter and chameleon was necessary for survival. "Begin!" Vex ordered, and the hunters slipped into the water. Aboard his boat, Park noticed unusual ripples moving against the current. 20 years earlier, before becoming a fisherman, he'd served in the Naval Special Forces. Those instincts never quite fade away. Quietly, he directed his crew to the special equipment compartment, the one they used during storm emergencies. Inside were flare guns, heavy hooks, reinforced nets, and spears for dangerous sea creatures. "Arm yourselves," he whispered. "Not sure what's coming, but something's hunting in these waters." The first attack came suddenly. A hunter burst from the water onto the smallest boat where the young crewman Day was working alone. The creature towered over him, skin shifting to match the boat's coloring. Day screamed as a paralysis rod struck his shoulder. But his scream was the warning the others needed. Park instantly recognized a predator's movements, the economy of motion, the practiced strike. Without hesitation, he signaled to his crew with hand gestures they'd practiced for typhoon emergencies. When the second hunter surfaced near Park's boat, the fishermen were ready. They didn't panic like expected prey. Instead, they executed a coordinated defense. 2 crewmen fired flares directly at the creature's sensory organs, while Park and another man cast a reinforced steel net designed to hold half a ton of thrashing tuna. The hunter, never expecting resistance, became entangled. Its skin changed, colors rapidly in confusion, as it found itself trapped. Park didn't hesitate. He drove a harpoon through what appeared to be a vital spot where multiple limbs joined the torso. The creature emitted a high-pitched sound that carried across the water, alerting its companions. But that was another mistake. Now the fishermen knew exactly where the other hunters were. "They hunt in water, but they don't know these waters," Park shouted. "Herd them toward the eastern reef." His crew understood immediately. The eastern reef was a maze of sharp volcanic rock just below the surface, invisible to someone unfamiliar with local geography, but memorized by every local fisherman from childhood. Using engine noise and more flares, they drove the remaining hunters into the labyrinth of stone. The creature's attempts to chase the boats resulted in catastrophic injuries as they impaled themselves on the hidden rocks. Meanwhile, in Seoul, the military was scrambling to respond to objects entering Earth's atmosphere. Captain Yoon, who led an experimental technology response unit, received urgent orders to investigate a landing site in a city park. "We have no protocol for this," her superior admitted over the secure line. "Just don't die and try to learn something." Yoon assembled her team of 12 specialists, engineers, combat medics, communications experts, and deployed to the location where a small craft had reportedly landed. The park had already been evacuated, with police establishing a perimeter. "Remember, we need information more than heroics," she told her team as they approached the impact site. "If it's hostile, we contain it. If possible, we capture." Unlike the fishermen of Jeju, Yoon's team had cutting-edge equipment: experimental sonic weapons, advanced body armor, and aerosol sedatives designed for riot control. What they didn't have was experience with alien threats. When they reached the crater, the scout ship was empty. Yoon immediately ordered a search pattern, knowing their quarry could be anywhere. The creature had a significant head start. "Movement in the tree line," her communications officer whispered through the tactical radio. "Big. Moving like nothing I've ever seen." Yoon signaled for the team to surround the area. Whatever this thing was, it was about to learn that humans weren't helpless. The Narul hunter struck with impressive speed, disabling 2 team members before they could react. But unlike the Jeju attack, this hunter faced prepared opponents with advanced weapons. When it lunged for a 3rd human, Yoon fired the experimental sonic disruptor. The effect was dramatic. The creature convulsed and dropped its weapons, outer membranes vibrating painfully. The team quickly moved in with restraints and sedatives. "We got it," Yoon reported back to headquarters. "1 alien captive, alive." Back on the Narul command ship, Commander Gorn received the distress signals from his hunters with increasing disbelief. 3 hunters dead, 1 captured. Impossible. These were elite predators who had successfully harvested dozens of worlds. "The data must be corrupted," he insisted. "No pre-interstellar species has ever neutralized a hunt pack, but the evidence was undeniable. Somehow these primitive humans had not only fought back, they'd won the first engagement." "How?" demanded the ship's elder. "They have no energy. Weapons, no space fleet, no defensive shields." Commander Gorn replayed the final transmissions from his fallen hunters. What he saw disturbed him deeply. The humans hadn't succeeded through superior technology. They'd used knowledge of their environment, coordinated tactics, and a surprising willingness to fight rather than flee. "They don't behave like prey," he finally admitted. "They adapt too quickly." For the first time in his long career of planetary harvesting, Commander Gorn felt something unfamiliar stirring in his thoughts. Doubt the sky darkened over major cities worldwide as the massive Narul harvester ships moved into position. Unlike the scout ships, these were impossible to hide. Each one nearly a mile long with jagged organic-looking protrusions that seemed to pulse with energy. People stared up in horror as their smartphones captured shaky footage of the alien. Armada Grand Harvester Krell stood on the command deck of the flagship, his imposing frame towering over even the tallest Narul officers. His exoskeleton bore the distinctive scarring of hundreds of successful harvests. "Commence standard protocol," he ordered. "Neutralize their military installations first, then begin resource extraction." The first wave of attack pods launched toward Earth's surface, targeting major military bases across the globe. The Narul had performed this operation countless times before. It was practically routine. In her makeshift laboratory beneath Seoul National University, researcher Ji hadn't slept in 3 days. The captured Narul hunter lay sedated on the examination table, surrounded by scanning equipment and monitoring devices. A team of scientists from 5 different countries worked alongside her, all of them racing against time. "Look at this," Ji said, pointing to unusual structures beneath the creature's jaw. "These glands are producing complex chemical compounds." A biochemist from India leaned closer. "Similar to insect pheromones, but far more sophisticated." Ji nodded. "They're communicating through scent as much as sound." That's why they seemed confused when we played back their own audio signals. Without the chemical component, it was meaningless to them. She had started as just a junior researcher in xenobiology, a field that had been entirely theoretical until 7 days ago. Now her observations could determine humanity's survival. When the first attack pods struck military bases, they encountered something unexpected: empty facilities. The humans had evacuated their command centers, moved their aircraft and vehicles, and dispersed their forces into hidden positions. The aliens found themselves hitting abandoned targets. In an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Colonel Choi addressed the emergency United Nations Security Council via secure video link. The captive alien and the bodies recovered from Jeju Island have given us crucial information, she explained. The Narul are apex predators who evolved as pack hunters. They follow rigid patterns and hierarchies. They're physically superior to us in almost every way, but they have one critical weakness: they can't adapt quickly. On screen, military and political leaders from around the world listened intently. Just days earlier, many of these nations had been hostile to one another. Now they worked together with singular focus. Our greatest advantage is their greatest weakness, Choi continued. They expect us to behave like prey, to run, to hide, to follow predictable patterns of fear. Instead, we'll do what humans have always done when faced with superior predators. We'll change the rules. The counterattack began not with weapons, but with scent. Using the chemical formulas developed by G's team, human forces deployed canisters of synthetic Narul command pheromones across battlefields. Attack groups of aliens received contradictory orders, causing confusion and hesitation. In the skies over Brazil, fighter pilots engaged Narul ships using constantly changing tactics. When the aliens adapted to one approach, the humans immediately switched to another. They used terrain features the Narul considered irrelevant: cloud formations, mountain ranges, even flocks of birds, to mask their movements. Grand Harvester. Krell received increasingly disturbing reports from his field commanders. The humans are not following standard prey response patterns, one reported. They retreat, then counterattack from unexpected angles. They appear disorganized but somehow coordinate perfectly. Another commander added, "They're using our own command sense against us. Battle groups are receiving conflicting orders." Krell's mandibles clicked in agitation. Impossible. They couldn't have decoded our chemical language so quickly, but they had. In laboratories around the world, researchers like G worked around the clock, identifying new Narul communications and developing countermeasures. Every captured piece of alien technology was immediately shared globally through a new open-source database accessible to scientists everywhere. What might have taken years of research by a single nation happened in days through unprecedented cooperation. Russian weapons experts worked alongside American engineers. Chinese biologists shared findings with European geneticists. Old enemies became vital allies. Colonel Choi's strategy exploited another Narul weakness: their specialized roles. Unlike humans who could adapt to different functions, each type of Narul was physically optimized for specific tasks. Warriors couldn't repair technology. Engineers couldn't fight effectively. By targeting specific Narul types, human forces created critical gaps in the alien operation chain. They evolved as perfect predators, G explained during a global briefing. But perfect adaptation to one environment means limited flexibility. Humans are imperfect generalists. We can do many things adequately rather than one thing perfectly. Right now, that's saving us. 3 weeks into the invasion, the tide began to turn. The Narul still held overwhelming technological superiority, but their rigid tactics were failing against humanity's creative chaos. In his command center, Grand Harvester Krell faced something he'd never experienced in his long lifetime: failure. His officers waited nervously as he absorbed the latest reports. "How are they communicating so effectively?" he demanded. "We've disrupted their electromagnetic signals, destroyed their satellites." His chief intelligence officer replied cautiously, "They're using everything: light signals, physical messengers, pre-industrial methods. When we block one communication method, they immediately switch to another." Krell smashed his claw against the holographic display. Prey species don't behave this way, and that was the fundamental miscalculation. The Narul had categorized humans as prey from the beginning. They couldn't comprehend that on Earth, the distinction between predator and prey was not fixed. Humans had been both throughout their evolutionary history, sometimes the hunters, sometimes the hunted. This dual nature had bred into them something the Narul couldn't understand: adaptability. As Krell prepared a new offensive, Colonel Choi gathered her global command team. Representatives from 194 nations filled screens around her as she outlined the next phase. "We've survived the first wave," she said. "Now we take the fight to them. The Narul expect us to defend. They don't expect us to attack their command structure directly." A general from Kenya spoke up. "Their ships are still technologically superior to anything we have." Choi nodded. "True, but thanks to researcher G and her international team, we now understand how they communicate, how their hierarchy functions. We don't need to defeat their technology. We just need to disrupt their organization." As the meeting concluded, G's team sent out a new breakthrough. They had cracked the Narul navigational system. It was the opening humanity needed. 4. The first time since their arrival, the Narul faced a species that refused to follow the predator-prey script. And for predators who had never needed to evolve beyond their instincts, this was a threat they were fundamentally unprepared to face. Engineer Sung wiped sweat from his forehead as he carefully extracted another component from the damaged Narul shuttle. His workshop, once a simple university lab, now resembled something from a science fiction movie. Alien technology scattered across workbenches, holographic displays showing incomprehensible symbols, and a team of 20 engineers from 12 different countries working around the clock. "Hand me the molecular bonder," he said to his assistant. The young woman passed him a tool that itself was a hybrid of human and Narul technology, something that hadn't existed 2 weeks ago. Sung had been fixing motorcycles in his family's shop when the invasion began. Now he was humanity's leading expert on Narul propulsion systems. The world had changed that quickly. "I think I've got it," he announced, holding up a small device that pulsed with an eerie blue light. "Their ships use quantum entanglement for navigation. That's why our jamming techniques haven't worked. They don't rely on conventional signals." Across the room, a physicist from Brazil looked up from her calculations. "Can we disrupt it?" Sung nodded slowly. "Better than that, I think we can hack it." The plan came together over the next 72 hours. It was audacious, maybe impossible, but no one used those words anymore. Impossible had become meaningless in a world where aliens had attacked, and humans were fighting back with their own technology. In a hardened bunker beneath what had once been Incheon International Airport, Special Forces Commander Kang reviewed the mission details with his strike team. The 12 men and women before him represented the best military operators from 9 countries, former rivals now united against a common enemy. "Once we board their mothership, we'll have approximately 20 minutes before their biological sensors detect our presence," Kang explained, his voice calm despite the enormity of what they were planning. "Engineer Sung's modified environmental suits should mask our biosignatures initially, but they won't hold up under direct scrutiny." A former Russian Spetsnaz operator raised her hand. "And if we're discovered before reaching the navigation core?" Kang didn't sugarcoat it. "Then the secondary teams will proceed with their missions. We're sending 3 teams up. Only one needs to succeed." They all understood the mathematics of the situation. None of them expected to return. The launch window came during a rare storm in the upper atmosphere, conditions that would help mask the heat signatures of the 3 modified Narul shuttles rising from Earth. These weren't stolen vessels. They had been built from scratch, using the reverse-engineered technology from captured ships. As Kang's shuttle ascended through churning clouds, he watched Earth fall away below them. The blue planet seemed so vulnerable from this vantage point, with the massive Narul harvesters hanging above it, like predators circling wounded prey. "Approaching the mothership," the pilot announced, activating Narul identification protocols. The shuttle's systems began broadcasting the codes Engineer Sung had extracted from captured Narul databases. For several tense seconds, nothing, happened. Then the massive landing bay doors on the underside of the mothership began to open. "They're letting us in," someone whispered, as if the aliens might hear them through the vacuum of space. The shuttle slipped into the cavernous bay, settling among dozens of identical vessels. Through the viewports, they could see Narul workers moving with mechanical efficiency, loading resources extracted from Earth. Some of those containers, Kang realized with a chill, likely held human captives. "Suits on, weapons check," he ordered, quietly. "Remember, we move like them. Deliberate, no wasted motion." Their suits were masterpieces of adaptive technology, built to mimic Narul biological signatures while protecting the humans inside. The helmets even emitted the chemical signatures G's team had identified as non-threat indicators in Narul society. They moved through the ship in pairs, following the path their intelligence had cobbled together from the memories of captured. Narul, an analysis of their technology. The mothership was vast, a city in space with chambers larger than football stadiums and corridors that stretched for kilometers. "This isn't just an invasion force," the team's xenobiologist whispered, as they passed enormous hydroponics chambers. "They're building colonies." Kang nodded grimly. "Earth is just the beginning." When they reached a major data access point, their tech specialist connected Sung's device to the alien interface. Information flooded their translators. "Commander," she said, voice tight with urgency, "they're not just planning to harvest Earth. They've already started establishing bases on Mars and have mining operations preparing for Jupiter's moons. They're harvesting the entire solar system." The revelation struck them all. The scale of the Narul operation was far beyond what they had imagined. "More reason to succeed," Kang replied. "Time check?" 11 minutes until our biosignatures will be detected." They pressed on, moving deeper, into the ship. Twice they had to hide as Narul warriors passed, their hearts pounding as the aliens paused, sensing something unusual but unable to identify it. The navigation core was different than they had expected. Not a room, but a vast chamber with a pulsing crystalline structure at its center, surrounded by Narul technicians. Dozens of them. "We can't fight through that many," the weapons specialist noted. Kang studied the room layout. "We don't have to, look." He pointed to maintenance conduits running beneath the floor grating. They were small, too small for the Narul with their rigid exoskeletons, but just large enough for flexible humans. "I'll go," said the smallest team member, a former tunnel rat from Vietnam's special forces. "Give me the virus package." 3 minutes later, crawling through spaces never meant for any sentient creature, she reached the underside of the main navigation crystal. Following Sung's precise instructions, she attached the device to specific points on the structure. "Package. Delivered," she whispered into her comm. "Activating now." The effect wasn't immediate. Nothing exploded, no alarms sounded. The virus worked more subtly, infiltrating the quantum entanglement system and corrupting navigational data throughout the fleet. As the strike team began their extraction, the first signs appeared. Narul controllers began moving erratically, their chemical signatures releasing what G's team had identified as distress indicators. Communication became chaotic as conflicting navigational data spread through their network. In the Grand Harvester's command chamber, Krell watched in growing horror as ship after ship in his fleet began reporting navigation failures. Vessels drifted off position, some colliding with others. The carefully coordinated harvest operation collapsed into chaos. "Isolate the infection," he ordered, but it was too late. The virus had been designed to exploit the Narul's greatest strength, their interconnected hive-like communication network. For the first time in their species' long history of successful planetary harvests, the Narul experienced something new, the cold sensation of vulnerability. Their perfect system was breaking down, and they had no protocol for this failure. As Kang's team fought their way back to their shuttle amidst growing chaos, they witnessed something remarkable. Narul warriors running in disorganized patterns, chemical fear signals overwhelming their disciplined responses. They've never lost before, the xenobiologist realized. They don't know how to process defeat. Commander Kang allowed himself a grim smile as their shuttle broke free from the disintegrating mothership. Below them, Earth still showed the scars of battle, but it remained unconquered. Neither prey nor predator, he said quietly. Just survivors, like we've always been. The last of the Narul ships limped away from Earth's solar system, trailing debris and venting atmosphere. From observation, posts on the Moon and Mars, humans watched their retreat with a mixture of relief and disbelief. They had won. Somehow, against all odds, they had repelled the most feared predatory species in the known galaxy. Director Bay stood in the newly constructed Global Defense Headquarters, watching real-time holographic displays of the retreating alien fleet. Just 6 months ago, she had been the transportation minister in her country's government. Now she led Earth's Unified Defense Initiative, a position created by unanimous consent of all nations. "Are they broadcasting anything?" she asked the communications officer. The young man nodded. "Continuously, Director. Our translators indicate they're sending warnings about Earth to their other fleet groups throughout the galaxy." Bay allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Let them spread the word." The recovered Narul communication logs had revealed a chilling truth. Earth had simply been the next target in a systematic harvesting operation that had consumed thousands of worlds over millennia. The Narul hadn't even considered humanity. A significant obstacle, just another resource to be processed and consumed. In research facilities around the world, scientists and engineers worked feverishly to understand and adapt the alien technology left behind. What might have taken centuries of normal technological evolution was happening in months. Engineer Sung, now heading the Propulsion Development Division, led a team of 500 researchers examining the quantum entanglement drives from captured Narul vessels. "The principles aren't actually that complex," he explained during a global briefing. "They've been using the same technology for thousands of years, with only incremental improvements. There's nothing creative about their engineering. It's efficient but stagnant." This became a recurring theme as humans explored Narul technology. For all their biological and technological superiority, the aliens lacked innovation. They hadn't needed it. As apex predators who had never faced serious resistance, their evolution had plateaued. 1 year after the retreat of the Narul, Director Bai presided over the activation of Earth's planetary shield system, a network of satellites and ground stations that could detect and intercept threats long before they reached the planet. "This is just the beginning," she told the global audience watching the ceremony. "The Narul taught us that we are not alone in this universe, and not all our cosmic neighbors are friendly. But they also showed us something more important. When humanity stands united, there is nothing we cannot overcome." The spirit of cooperation that had arisen during the invasion didn't fade with victory. The old political boundaries remained, but a new global identity had emerged alongside them. Humans had looked into the face of extinction and found their commonality more meaningful than their differences. 3 years after the invasion, the first human interstellar vessel prepared for its maiden voyage. Built in orbit, using Narul-derived technology but distinctly human in design, the ship Pathfinder represented something the aliens could never have imagined, a prey species taking to the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers. Ambassador Han, formerly a university linguistics professor specializing in ancient communication systems, had been chosen to lead the diplomatic mission. Her team included representatives from every continent, specialists in xenobiology, cultural anthropology, and first contact protocols. "We go not seeking worlds to harvest," she said during the launch ceremony, "but civilizations to meet as equals." The Pathfinder's journey took them to a star system just 12 light-years from Earth, close in cosmic terms but unreachable before the adaptation of Narul drive technology. There they found something unexpected, a thriving civilization that had been reduced to a pre-industrial state by Narul harvesting centuries earlier. When the human delegation landed on the planet, they were met with terror. The insectoid natives, tall with iridescent exoskeletons, believed the Narul had returned. It took days of patient communication before Ambassador Han could make them understand that humans were different. "The harvesters attacked us too," she explained through newly developed translation devices. "We fought them off." The native leader, a being named in sounds humans couldn't properly pronounce, vibrated in disbelief. "No species has ever repelled the world eaters," it communicated. "We did," Han replied simply, "and we can help you rebuild what they took from you." News spread quickly among nearby star systems. The Pathfinder visited 7 different civilizations on its maiden voyage, each one previously victimized by the Narul, each one astonished to learn that the Predators had been defeated. On the 6th world they visited, they made a surprising discovery. The aquatic species inhabiting the mostly ocean planet possessed ancient records of a galactic community that had existed before the rise of the Narul. Thousands of civilizations trading knowledge and resources peacefully across vast distances. The World Eaters destroyed it all, their historian explained, floating in a specially designed communication chamber aboard the Pathfinder. Over many generations, they consumed world after world until the Alliance fragmented and collapsed. Survival became each species' only goal. Ambassador Han brought this knowledge back to Earth, where Director Bay had overseen the construction of 5 more interstellar vessels. The implications were clear. The galaxy had once known peace and cooperation before the Narul imposed their predatory hierarchy. "Perhaps it can know such peace again," Han suggested during the high-level briefing. 5 years after defeating the Narul invasion, humanity hosted representatives from 27 alien civilizations on Earth's moon. The newly constructed Harmony Dome provided suitable environments for species ranging from methane breathers to silicon-based life forms. Ambassador Han opened the historic gathering with a simple truth. We are all survivors. Each of our civilizations has suffered under Narul predation. Alone we were vulnerable. Together we need never fear them again. The Galactic Cooperative was formed that day, not an empire built on conquest, but an alliance founded on mutual protection and shared knowledge. Earth, as the only world known to have successfully repelled a full Narul harvest fleet, became its natural center. Director Bay, watching the proceedings via secure link from Earth, reflected on the strange path that had led here. Humanity had spent most of its history fighting itself, only to find its greatest strength when faced with an external threat. A decade after the invasion, long-range sensors detected Narul activity at the edges of cooperative space. This time there was no panic. The combined fleet of 30 civilizations moved to intercept them, led by human commanders who had fought in the Earth defense. The Narul retreated without engaging. For the first time in their species' history, they had encountered prey that had not only fought back, but had fundamentally changed the rules of engagement. The hunters had become the hunted. In the great assembly hall of the cooperative headquarters on Earth's moon, a monument stood, a simple holographic display showing the first images of the Narul ships arriving at Earth. Beneath it, inscribed, in 28 different languages, were words from an ancient human saying, "The stars called to us as they call to all intelligent life. But unlike the predators who sought only to consume, we came to build. In the face of darkness, we chose light. When threatened with extinction, we chose unity. And in that choice, we found not just our salvation, but our purpose." The universe's deadliest predator species had indeed found their match in the humans they had dismissed as easy prey. And in doing so, they had inadvertently created something they could never understand, a galactic community united not by fear, but by hope.